Hello friends, this is the fifth part of a series I have started on the life of Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple Company, a man who started a company from his garage and revolutionized five industries. If you want to learn something new, you must watch this video from the beginning to the end, and your English will definitely improve in the process. So now let's get started, friends. Wozniak has been designing a terminal with a keyboard and monitor that would connect to a distant mini computer. Using a microprocessor, a chip that had an entire central processing unit on it, he could put some of the capacity of the mini computer inside the terminal itself, so it could become a small standalone computer on a desktop. This whole vision of a personal computer just popped into his head. After work each day, Wozniak would go home for dinner and then return to HP to moonlight on his computer. He spread out the parts in his cubicle, figured out their placement, and soldered them onto his motherboard. Then he began writing the software that would get the microprocessor to display images on the screen. Because he could not afford to pay for computer time, he wrote the code by hand. After a couple of months, he was ready to test it. He typed a few keys on the keyboard and he was shocked. The letters were displayed on the screen. It was Sunday, June 29, 1975, a milestone for the personal computer. It was the first time in history that anyone had typed a character on a keyboard and seen it show up on their own computer screen right in front of them. Jobs was impressed. He also began to help Wozniak get components. Jobs made a few calls and was able to score some from Intel for free. Jobs said, "Why don't we build and sell printed circuit boards?" They decided to build and sell 50 printed circuit boards. In order to raise the money they needed, Wozniak sold his HP 65 calculator. For his parts, Jobs sold his minibus. They now had, with their own small savings, thrown in about $1,300 in working capital, the design for a product and a plan. Now that they had decided to start a business, they needed a name. Jobs proposed Apple Computer. Apple took the edge off the word computer. Plus, it would get them ahead of Atari in the phone book. Jobs realized he needed an ally to adjudicate if there was a disagreement. So he enlisted his friend Ron, the middle-aged engineer at Atari who had once started a slot machine company. On April 1st, 1976, Jobs and Wozniak went to Ron's apartment in Mountain View to draw up the partnership agreement. The division of shares and profits was clear: 45%, 45%, 10%. And it was stipulated that any expenditures of more than $100 would require agreement of at least two of the partners. And also, the responsibilities were spelled out. Wozniak shall assume both general and major responsibility for the conduct of electrical engineering. Jobs shall assume general responsibility for electrical engineering and marketing. Ron shall assume major responsibility for mechanical engineering and documentation. As Jobs started planning to borrow and spend more money, Ron then got cold feet. Ron was afraid potential creditors would go after him. So he returned to the Santa Clara County office just 11 days later with a statement of withdrawal and an amendment to the partnership. He received $800 for his 10% of the company and shortly after $1,500 more. Jobs and Wozniak took the stage together for a presentation to the Homebrew Computer Club shortly after they signed Apple into existence. Wozniak held up one of their newly produced circuit boards and described the microprocessor, the 8 kilobytes of memory, and the version of BASIC he had written. The audience was not very impressed, but one important person stayed behind to hear more. His name was Paul Terrell, and in 1975 he had opened a computer store. Terrell was impressed enough to order 50 computers, but there was a condition. He didn't want just $50 printed circuit boards for which customers would then have to buy all the chips and do the assembling. Instead, he wanted the boards to be fully assembled. For that, he was willing to pay about $500 a piece cash on delivery. To fill the order, they needed about $15,000 worth of parts. Allen, the third prankster from Homestead High, and his father agreed to loan them $5,000. Jobs was able to convince the manager of Kramer Electronics to give Jobs the parts on 30-day credit. After 30 days, Apple was on the verge of being profitable. They were able to build the boards more cheaply than they thought because Jobs got a good deal on parts. Wozniak had already begun thinking about the next version of the machine, so they started calling their current model the Apple I. In addition to the 50 sold to the computer shop, they were building another 100 for retail outlets. Jobs and Wozniak went to the first annual Personal Computer Festival held in New Jersey. Apple had been assigned to a table near the back of the exhibition hall. Jobs walked the floor to inspect the competition. What he saw didn't impress him. Wozniak was the best circuit engineer, and the Apple I could beat the competition in terms of functionality. That is all, friends, for today. Please subscribe to this channel and share this video with as many people as you can. Thank you, friends, for watching this video. Bye, friends.